about to hear is true. The names have been changed to protect the innocent.
Fatima Cigarettes, best of all king-size cigarettes, brings you Dragnet on both radio and television.
You're a detective sergeant. You're assigned to Personnel Division. A resident of your city files a report of assault and battery. His shoulder is dislocated. He's been badly beaten. He claims his assailant was a young police officer. Your job? Investigate.
Comparison proves Fatima quality.
Yes, comparison proves Fatima quality.
Compare Fatima with any other king-size cigarette.
1. Fatima's length filters the smoke 85 millimeters for your protection.
2. Fatima's length cools the smoke for your protection.
3. Fatima's length gives you those extra puffs, 21% longer than standard cigarette size.
And you get an extra mild and soothing smoke, plus the added protection of Fatima quality.
Definitely the best quality in its class, but the same price as the cigarette you are now smoking.
Prove Fatima quality yourself today. Buy Fatima in the bright, sunny yellow pack. Best of all, king-size cigarettes.
Dragnet, the documented drama of an actual crime. For the next 30 minutes, in cooperation with the Los Angeles Police Department, you will travel step by step on the side of the law through an actual case transcribed from official police files. From beginning to end, from crime to punishment, Dragnet is the story of your police force in action.
It was Tuesday, June 11th. It was mild in Los Angeles. We were working the day watch out of BIA. My partner's Ed Jacobs. The boss is Lieutenant Jessup. My name's Friday. It was 10:23 a.m. when I got to room 83, the squad room.
Joe, you catch up with the lieutenant?
Yeah, in a meeting. Said he'd be out about 11:30. He wants us to handle it for the time being.
Oh. Well, Joe, this is Officer Blanchard. This is my partner, Joe Friday.
I'm glad to know you, Friday. I think I've seen you around Central a couple of times.
Yeah, sure. How are you?
Well, what's this thing all about? Do you mind telling me?
You worked yesterday, did you?
Yeah, that's right. My regular beat, South Central area.
Anything out of the ordinary happen while you were on duty?
No, not much. Made a couple of pinches, that's about all. Pretty quiet otherwise.
Did you make one of those arrests at 7928 Cortlandt Avenue?
Yeah, that's right. A woman, 2 men, users. All 3 of them were booked in violation of State Narcotics Act.
Any of the 3 familiar to you at all, Blanchard? I mean, had you ever seen them before the time you arrested them?
No, none of them. I knew the place, though. I've been keeping an eye on it lately. One of those old-fashioned homes converted into a rooming house.
Uh-huh.
I've been noticing some of the people going in and out of the place. They didn't look too good to me. And that's why I say I've been keeping an eye on the house. Now, what's the story on this anyway? You get a kickback on the arrest I made?
Well, we'd like to have your version of it first, Blanchard. Exactly what happened. How'd you come to make the pinch?
Well, I was walking my regular beat. I think it was about 3:30 yesterday afternoon. I was going along Cortlandt, the 7900 block. A woman came out of the front door and hailed me. She complained about a 507 party in the house a couple doors down the street.
And that was at number 7928, the boarding house?
Yeah. I checked it out. The party was going on up on the 3rd floor. I went up, found the girl and the 2 men in the room facing on the street. The girl was fixing a pop for herself when I came in. 2 caps of heroin on the table in front of her.
Mm-hmm. What'd you do then?
I made a grab for the 2 caps. One of the guys beat me to it. Got him, ran to the next room, and tried to flush him down the drain. He didn't quite make it, though. I got one of the caps before he could get rid of it.
What'd you do then, Blanchard?
Well, I sat the 3 of them down, called into the office. I checked the room over while we were waiting, found 2 more caps of heroin, usual equipment to go with it. When the radio car showed up, the 3 of them were taken downtown to narcotics squad and booked. That's all I can tell you about it.
Well, during the time you were waiting there in the room, Blanchard, did you have any trouble with the suspects at all?
Well, I got a lot of talk from one of the men, a fellow by the name of Evans. He's supposed to run the boarding house. Claims he didn't have anything to do with it. He didn't know the girl was a hype. You know, the usual stuff.
And that was the extent of it? Just talk?
Sure, that's all. Why?
Well, that's not the story, according to Evans. He had his lawyer bail him out last night. He was in to file charges against you.
Huh? What do you mean?
Assault and battery. He claims that you worked him over for no reason at all. He says you beat him up and dislocated his shoulder.
Oh, he's crazy. He's lying. I didn't work him over.
Well, he says he's got witnesses to prove it, Blanchard. The 2 people who were with him, the woman, the other man. He says they'll swear that's what you did.
Yeah, but it's not true. They're trying to cook up a frame. I didn't touch any of them.
Well, this Evans looks like he's been mussed up. Cuts and bruises all over his face. His shoulder's fairly recent, too.
Yeah, I know that, but I didn't do it. He was in the same shape when I found him up in that room yesterday. Matter of fact, I asked him about it. He wouldn't tell me. It's the truth, Sergeant, so help me. All three of them are lying. I didn't beat them up.
Well, it's your word against theirs, Blanchard. The facts seem to favor Evans.
I don't get this at all. Two of those people are known hypes. They'd swear anything for a free cap. You know that. What good is their word?
Maybe no good at all. It's not up to us to decide. Evans filed a complaint. It's our job to follow through.
Now, you're sure about the shape Evans was in when you found him up in that room yesterday, Blanchard? He was already marked up, is that right?
I'm sure he was. I told you. I asked him about it. He wouldn't answer me.
But you had no way of proving that you couldn't possibly have been responsible for it.
Well, it's up to him, isn't it, Evans? If he says I worked him over, let him prove it.
I'm afraid he's got the jump there. Two witnesses.
Yeah, but they're lying. You must know that. They're lying.
Well, now, look, you can see the position it puts us in. If you're innocent, we're going to do all we can. If you're guilty, we'll see that you get everything that's coming to you.
Well, you know it as well as I do, Sergeant. I had no reason to beat him up. I didn't do it.
Well, it's not up to us, Blanchard. The court will have to decide.
Doesn't make sense. None of it does.
There's no other way to handle it. We got 4,500 men in the department. We don't claim they're all saints. Once in a while, one of them turns bad, and all of us get a black eye. You're in a jam, Blanchard. Like anyone else, you'll get a fair trial.
Yeah. Well, what happens now? Do I draw suspension?
Yeah, that's right. If you're cleared of the charges in court, there'll be a hearing before the Board of Rights.
Am I through right now?
We'll have to book you in at the main jail. Case will be presented at the DA's office tomorrow.
Doesn't make sense. I had no reason to beat up Evans. No reason at all.
You sure of that, are you?
What do you mean? Of course I'm sure.
Well, Evans claims you did have a reason, a good one.
What?
Well, he says you handed him a proposition. He wouldn't go for it, so you worked him over.
What do you mean? What kind of a proposition?
The bad kind.
Huh?
He says you wanted a payoff. Investigating charges against a police officer involves exactly the same procedure as cases where private citizens are concerned. Prove the suspect innocent or guilty. If Blanchard was innocent, it wasn't going to be an easy job proving it. If he hadn't beat up the complainant, George Evans, and dislocated his shoulder, it seemed the only way out would be to find the man who did. Either that or prove that the two witnesses Evans had come up with were lying. If Blanchard was guilty, if he actually had slugged and beaten Evans, we had to find sufficient evidence and we had to find a motive. 11:10 a.m., Ed and I took Officer Harry Blanchard over to the main jail where he was booked in and lodged in one of the cell blocks. Then we went upstairs to the women's jail where we interviewed one of the witnesses to the alleged beating, an Eleanor Rowland. She'd had previous arrests for vagrancy, grand theft auto, and petty theft, as well as an established reputation as a user of narcotics. She was 23 years old.
Yeah, it was terrible. That cop really roughed him up, poor old Evans. Cop didn't have to treat him like that.
How long have you known George Evans, Miss Rowland? You old friends?
No, I wouldn't say that. I met him a couple weeks ago when I came down from north.
San Francisco?
Portland. I was visiting up there. I'm a Portland girl originally.
Well, how about this other man you were with at the time Officer Blanchard picked you up, this Ray Sherman? He an old friend?
Buster, yeah, I've known him a few years.
Do you know Evans very well?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. Ray's had a room at the boarding house a couple of years. I guess he's good friends with Evans. Say, can I ask you something?
Yes, ma'am.
You ever work narcotics up in Portland?
No, ma'am, never have.
Face is familiar. Could have sworn I mentioned Portland.
Do you want to run over that story again for us, Miss Rowland, about what happened yesterday?
Not much to say, just the same as I told you.
You usually stay at Evans' rooming house when you're in town, do you?
No, it's only the second time I was there.
How about George Evans? Was he there at the time?
No, not first. Me and Buster had a pop, and then we sat around and talked.
Mm-hmm.
Evans came in a little later. Three of us talked. Told me and Buster not to bring any more junk in the house. He didn't want to get into trouble. Didn't speak of the devil, a cop walked in.
What happened then?
Buster grabbed two caps off the table, tried to get rid of them. He only got rid of one, though. The cop got the other one.
Well, how'd the argument start? You remember that? Between Evans and the officer, I mean.
Well, I was a little high at the time. I don't remember it word for word. Evans said he didn't have anything to do with it, but the cop kept pressing him. He told Evans he'd forget about it if Evans would pay him off. Evans told him no, he wouldn't give him a cent, and then the cop started beating him up.
You were in the same room with him all this time?
Yeah, Buster and me. We saw it all, poor Evans. He really got worked over. Cop didn't have to treat him like that. Say, are you sure you're not from Portland?
Yes, ma'am, I'm sure. Now, about how many times would you say the officer hit Evans?
Oh, I couldn't tell you that exactly. Dozens of times, I guess. Kept hitting him with his fists, pushed him all around the room. I was a little high at the time. I don't remember everything exactly. Sure could use a booster about now.
Are you sure about everything you've told us, Miss Rowland? That's the truth?
Yeah, that's right. Some of the details I didn't remember so well. He straightened it out for me, though. He told me just what happened.
Who's that?
George Evans.
11:50 a.m. Ed and I continued questioning Eleanor Rowland. The more we talked to her, the more we were convinced that at the time of the alleged beating, she was under a heavy dose of narcotics, and that for the most part, she picked up her version of the story from the alleged victim, George Evans. We went down to the second floor of the main jail to one of the interview rooms where we talked to the second witness, Ray Sherman, alias Tom Raymond, alias Buster Raymond. He also had a long record as a user of narcotics. He gave the same general version of the incident as the Rowland girl did, But despite the girl's story, he claimed he was not under the influence of narcotics at the time Officer Blanchard entered the room and made the arrest. Besides that, there were other discrepancies. 1:05 p.m., we had some lunch at the Federal Cafe, and then we drove out to interview the complainant in the case, George Evans. After checking in his rooming house, we finally located him at a neighborhood bowling alley. He was sitting at a bar adjoining the actual playing area, drinking a bottle of beer. Parts of his face and neck were bandaged, and his left shoulder was in a cast. He appeared friendly and cooperative.
I kept telling the cop I didn't have any money. Told him I wouldn't give him a payoff even if I did.
So he started working you over, that right, Evans?
Yes, that's right. I don't have anything against cops normally, but this guy, that's something else. How do you ever get on the force anyway?
Had you ever had any contact with Officer Blanchard before yesterday, Evans?
Yes, I did, twice before. He came to the house, accused me of running a hideout for thieves, junkies. Tried to get me to pay him off then, too. I wouldn't do it.
That's, when was that, Evans?
About 6-8 months ago. Yeah, at least that.
Well, how was it you didn't report Blanchard then?
Well, that wouldn't cause any trouble, get mixed up in a law case. I figured I could take care of him myself. But after that going over yesterday, that was enough for me. I don't understand how the guy ever made the force to begin with.
What's the matter?
That shoulder of mine, he really tore it apart.
How'd you spend your time yesterday, Evans? Do you mind telling us?
No, I don't mind. I slept till about 12:30, 1 o'clock. Had a little bit of a hangover. Then I got up and made some breakfast and read the paper. That's about size.
You mean you were in your room all day after the time you went down the hall to Ray Sherman's room?
That's right. Ray was there with this girlfriend of his, Eleanor. I didn't know she was a hype. That's the truth. Ray should have known better having her there. I don't like the kind of stuff going on around that place.
Now, we've checked you through the record bureau, Evans. There's been 3 or 4 similar cases at your places the last few years, hasn't there?
A couple, yeah. It's a real problem. I don't know how you keep them out. Whole neighborhood around here, you know. Pretty hard to stop it, I guess.
We understand you were in the room there while the girl helped herself to a fix. Is that right?
No, I wasn't in the room when she took the fix. I got there a couple minutes after. I didn't even know what was going on. You can ask Ray Sherman, the girl, too. They'll tell you I wasn't there.
Well, there's something else we wanted to ask you about. Sherman and the girl don't seem too sure of their stories. Can you straighten us out there?
What do you mean?
Well, Sherman told us one thing, the girl tells us something else. Can't seem to get together.
Yeah, but I told him.
You told him what, Evans?
Well, nothing. I told him to tell the truth, that's all. That stupid Ray. He doesn't know half the time what he's doing.
Well, that doesn't make him much of a witness then, does it?
Well, what do you mean? He was there when that cop slugged me, beat me up. He could see that much.
Well, that's just it. We're not sure he did.
Huh?
The girl says Blanchard worked you over in the living room there. Sherman says Blanchard took you out in the kitchen and beat you up. Now, which is it?
I think I'm beginning to get the pitch.
How's that?
You're out to cover up for that cop. Is that it? Take care of your own?
We're assigned to investigate this thing, Evans, just like any other criminal case. Blanchard's not getting any more of a break than any other suspect would.
Yeah, sure.
We still haven't answered our question. Where did it happen, living room or kitchen?
The interview's all over, Sergeant. I got the pitch. You can take this back to your office. I'm going to get that cop convicted. If it's the last thing I do, you can count on that.
What's the matter, Evans? All we did was ask you a simple question.
Don't try to kid me, Sergeant. I got the angle. You're trying for a cover-up. Okay, go ahead and try.
Now, look, why don't you snap out of it, mister? Nobody's trying to cover up unless it's you. Sherman and the girl are your witnesses. Some of the points of their stories don't check out. We want to clear them up. Does that sound unreasonable?
I told you, Sergeant, it's no use. I got your angle.
Answer me one more thing, Evans.
You're on your own. I'm telling you nothing.
Who was the doctor that treated you after you were beaten up?
Down at Georgia Street, the emergency. You ought to know that.
No, I mean for your shoulder. We checked over your car down at Georgia Street. No mention there of a dislocated shoulder.
No, of course not. I didn't even know I had one until I was bailed out. I had my own doctor fix it.
You mind giving us his name?
Why should I? I was willing to go along, cooperate, then you started playing the cage. You're trying to cover up for that cop. Now you work it out on your own.
All right, mister. Any way you want it.
You bet that's the way I want it. You had this whole thing framed from the beginning.
Now you're off the track, Evans.
You're not kidding me. You're trying to prove that cop's innocent, trying to make me out a liar. What am I supposed to do, help you prove I'm a liar?
No, you've helped enough already. Ed and I double-checked through Officer Blanchard's departmental record. It showed that Blanchard had been working his present beat for a little more than 4 months. Evans had told us that Blanchard allegedly had solicited payoffs from him at least 6 to 8 months before. The following day, Ed and I made further inquiries in the neighborhood of Evans' rooming house and also among his friends and associates. For one thing, we found out that Evans had not spent the entire morning and early afternoon in the house. He'd been seen leaving his place by several neighbors at about 10 a.m. Through one of his contacts, we got the address of an ex-wife, since remarried, a Marie Evans Zarconi. We located her in a small apartment in the East Wilshire district, a small brunette woman about 35.
Now, you tell us she used to be married to Evans.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, what kind of business was Evans in when you were married to him, ma'am?
Well, he had that rooming house over on Cortland
Yes,
Avenue.
ma'am, we know about that. Was there anything else?
What's the matter, anyway?
Just a routine investigation. We'd like to have as much background on him as you can remember. Are you on fairly good terms with Evans now?
No, I haven't seen him since we split up. About a year and a half ago, I think. That's why I couldn't stand him.
What was the trouble, ma'am? You mind telling us?
He just isn't much good, that's all. You find a lot of names to fit him. He was in everything.
Well, how do you mean?
That's why I got away from him. Every cheap, lousy racket you can think of, he was in it. Peddling dope, blackmail, making books, some of the two-bit rackets. He's been in all of them, one after the other.
I had to get away.
The rooming house on Cortland Avenue, that's where he's been operating all this time?
As long as I've known him, yeah. About 3 years, I'd say.
Is narcotics just a sideline with him, or does he go in for it pretty heavy?
He was in it pretty heavy when I left him. I don't know what he's been doing since. I don't care. Just soon forget all about it.
Yes, ma'am, I can understand.
What's the matter now, anyway? Got a case against him?
Well, not exactly. Evans is filed against a police officer, assault and battery, soliciting a bribe. We're investigating the charges.
Sounds like him. Some cop really rough him up?
Well, we don't know, ma'am. That's what we're trying to find out.
Oh. Well, I'd like to help you out. Don't think I can, though.
Well, just one more question, ma'am. While you were married to Evans, did you have a family doctor? I mean, one that you called regularly when you were sick?
Yeah, we did. Why?
Well, what was his name? Can you remember?
Yeah, Dr. Chase. Would you like his address?
2:47 p.m. We got to Dr. Chase's office, and luckily we found him in.
Take a look at this magazine, Joe.
What?
National Geographic. Looks like a real old one, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it sure does. Cover's torn off there.
Yeah. What do you know about that? It's older than I thought. Look at this here.
What do you got?
These pictures, eh? Look. 4 pages of them. Pretty grand affair, huh?
Yeah.
Teddy Roosevelt breaks ground for Panama Canal. How about that?
Yeah.
Sorry to keep you waiting, gentlemen.
That's perfectly all right, Doctor.
Let's see now. You want to know about...
Mr. Evans, Doctor. George Evans.
Oh, yes, Evans. What was it exactly, Sergeant? What did you have in mind?
Well, the first thing we'd like to know is if you've treated Evans recently, the last week or so.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I have. He was in here, well, let me see now. Let's see, yes, I thought so. He was in here 3 days ago. I had some bad cuts and bruises.
Mm-hmm.
They'd already been treated, though. There wasn't much I could do.
Well, was there anything else wrong with him, Doctor?
No, not actually. I examined his shoulder. He insisted it hurt him. He wanted me to put it in a cast.
Mm-hmm. You put the cast on, did you?
Well, there really wasn't any need for it, but I put it on anyway. A little bit of psychiatry thought it'd make him feel better.
Well, how do you mean, Doctor? Wasn't any need for it?
Just one of those peculiar things. I've been treating Evans for some time, you know.
Yes, sir. That's what we understand.
It's fairly unusual. Hardly a rare case, though. I suppose you might call it a trick shoulder. It looks as though it might be dislocated, but it actually isn't. I think it's voluntary.
You mean he could do this thing himself?
Oh, yes. He can make it appear dislocated anytime he wants.
You are listening to Dragnet, authentic stories of your police force in action.
Fatima, America's first largest-selling blended cigarette. Now, best of all, king-size cigarettes. Prove it yourself today.
Compare Fatima with any other king-size cigarette.
1. Fatima's length filters the smoke 85 millimeters for your protection.
2. Fatima's length cools the smoke for your protection.
3. Fatima's length gives you those extra puffs, 21% longer than standard cigarette size.
And you get an extra mild and soothing smoke, plus the added protection of Fatima quality.
Friends, in Fatima, the difference is quality. Fatima contains the finest domestic and Turkish tobaccos superbly blended. And Fatima is extra mild, with a much different, much better flavor and aroma. Because of its quality, its extra mildness, its better flavor and aroma, more smokers now insist on Fatima than ever before. Switch to Fatima today. Remember, each king-size Fatima filters and cools the smoke, gives you those extra puffs, and you get an extra mild and soothing smoke, plus the added protection of Fatima quality. Buy Fatima. Best of all, king-size cigarettes.
Saturday, June 15th, 10 a.m. The investigation continued. Meantime, the newspapers were still making front-page material out of the story. One of the morning banner lines read, "Cop slugs cripples citizen to get payoff," and another one, "Police brutality rouses entire city." Our investigation went on. Early Saturday afternoon, Ed and I succeeded in locating a former friend of Evans who told us that he'd seen him downtown the morning of the day on which the alleged beating had taken place. The same time Evans had told us he was in bed nursing a hangover. The former friend, a Fred Werner, said Evans was in the company of 2 known gamblers, Carl Sweetser and Stanley Parrish. He told us that he'd spotted the 3 of them together at about 11:45 a.m. We questioned Sweetser and Parrish, but they refused to tell us anything. They admitted that they were acquainted with Evans, but they knew nothing about the beating he'd received. We continued making the rounds. 5:30 p.m. We dropped to the main jail and questioned Evans' two witnesses again, Ray Sherman and Eleanor Rowland. We got the same stories as before. 6:18 p.m. We got back to the city hall.
Long stretch, huh? Sure be glad to get home.
Yeah, not a bad day, though. We had fair luck, didn't we?
I suppose so. It could always be better. Sure like to get the straight story one way or the other.
You want to check the book, Ed, see if we got anything?
Yeah, okay. No, not much, Joe. Call from a Tom Donnelly, you know him?
Donnelly? No, that doesn't sound too familiar to me.
I got it. Personnel Jacobs. How's that? No, I'm afraid he's gone for the night. Yeah, huh? No, I'm sorry. I wouldn't know. All right, thank you. Another message here for us, Joe, in the book.
Yeah?
From Blanchard's wife again. I'm getting to feel pretty silly about it, telling her the same thing night after night. Why don't you call her tonight?
Well, you've been doing all right. Why give up now? Personnel, Friday. Yeah. What was that? Mm-hmm. Your name? Yeah, okay. Uh-huh. 10 o'clock tonight? All right, that's fine. That's so. Sure. Yeah, we'll meet you. Okay. 10 o'clock. Yeah, fine. Bye. Sounds pretty good.
Who was it?
Guy by the name of Martin Kimbrough says he knows George Evans. He wants to talk to us tonight.
What's the pitch?
I don't know. Might be straight, might not.
What'd he say?
About Evans being worked over. He claims he knows all about it.
Yeah?
He says Blanchard couldn't possibly have done it. 7:05 p.m. We went over to Frank Tang's place, had some dinner, and then we drove out to interview the man who'd identified himself on the phone as Martin Kimbrough. We located him at the designated meeting place, a small bar just off Beverly Boulevard and Normandy Avenue. Kimbrough was a small man, slight build, middle-aged. He seemed less sure of himself than he did on the phone. He said that he knew George Evans fairly well and that up until 6 months before he'd been on good terms with him. He didn't go into details, but he gave us the general idea that Evans had cheated him on some business deal the two of them had been engaged in. We asked Kimbrough about the beating Evans had taken. He said it was common knowledge among the people he traveled with that gamblers Carl Sweetser and Stanley Parrish were responsible for beating up Evans. He'd welched on a gambling debt, and the two of them had been after him for months to pay off. He also said he knew a close friend of the two gamblers who told him that in private, Carl Sweetser openly boasted of beating up Evans. According to Kimbrough, the beating had taken place about 1 p.m., the Monday before, the same day Officer Blanchard allegedly had given him the beating. We located Sweetser in the coffee shop of a small hotel on South Rampart Street.
I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about, Sergeant. I don't know any George Evans. I've never heard of him.
We understand you do, Sweetser. Heard you used to play cards with him. Got it from a couple of people.
That's all. I guess they made a mistake. I don't remember the name at all. Maybe he's going under a different one, huh?
Well, how about his description? You ought to remember that.
Well, maybe I meet quite a few people. It's kind of hard to place all of them, you know. What's kind of look like?
Oh, he's tall, dark complexion, dark hair, scar under his chin. He dresses pretty well, usually wears a suit.
No, it doesn't mean a thing to me.
Runs a rooming house over on Cortlandt Avenue. He's been in quite a few rackets, all in all.
No, sorry, Fred. I wouldn't know him.
Now, look, we haven't got any beef with you, Sweetser. That's not the point. Evans is trying to get away with a fast one. We're out to stop him. We could use your help. How about it?
I don't see how I can help you. What's the beef, anyway?
We think you know. It's been all over the newspapers the last couple of days.
Oh, yeah. A young cop? What's Evans got against him, anyway?
He's trying to save face. We figure that's what we hear, anyway.
Well, what do you mean?
Well, I think you know how Evans likes to play the big shot. It wouldn't do his stock much good around town if the real story got out.
I don't follow. What story are you talking about?
About his welching on a gambling tab, getting roughed up. If he says a cop did it, it makes him look a lot better, doesn't it? He comes out of it pretty clean that way, doesn't he?
Here, pass us all, huh?
Yeah, sure.
Why don't you guys have some coffee? I hate to eat alone.
Okay, as soon as the waitress comes around.
No. Oh, what else you hear about this, Evans? Pretty bad boy, that, right?
Bad enough. He's got a fast mouth, telling quite a few stories around the neighborhood.
That's so. Yeah, I might remember him. Tall, dark guy who runs a rooming house.
Yeah, that's right. You should remember him. He's mentioned you in a couple of the stories he's passing around.
Yeah, where'd you get that?
Talking to a fellow last night. He says Evans claims that card game he was in with you was rigged. That's why he didn't pay you off. He claims you and Stan Parrish framed the whole thing. Is that right?
That's a laugh. Huh? Phony bums are all alike. Lose a couple of dollars and squeal like a pig. What's this Evans doing now?
He's up for narcotics rap. He's out on bail.
Yeah, cheap punk. What's your stake in this thing?
We're trying to clear the thing up. Apparently, Evans figures he's going to frame the young cop, save face, talk himself out of a bad situation.
Oh, what do you want from me?
The truth.
I'm not going to talk myself into jail, young cop or not.
We're not asking you to.
You want to clear the case, huh? All you need is proof the cop didn't give Evans a working over.
That's right.
Okay, you got a deal.
Without actually incriminating himself in any way, Carl Sweetser gave us information and leads which, after they were checked out, showed definitely that George Evans was slugged and beaten in a neighborhood at least a mile from his rooming house. We talked to half a dozen people who saw Evans in that neighborhood shortly after 1 p.m., the day of the incident. We talked to the clerk at the drugstore where Evans went to buy iodine and bandages. They all told us that he bore the markings of a severe beating as early as 1 o'clock that afternoon. Evans had told us repeatedly that he'd received the beating at the hands of Officer Blanchard no earlier than 3 or 3:15 that afternoon. Ed and I drove over to the main jail where we interviewed Evans' 2 witnesses again. The girl, Eleanor Rowland, was the first to break. She admitted that Evans had promised both her and her friend, Ray Sherman, $50 apiece if they would go along with him in his plan to frame Officer Blanchard for assault and battery and soliciting a bride. After an hour of questioning, Sherman admitted the same thing. We had a stenographer take their statements. 4:50 p.m., Ed and I got in the car and drove out to the rooming house on Cortlandt Avenue.
Yeah? Oh, how are you, Sergeant?
You want to get your coat, Evans? Like to see you downtown.
What for? What's it about?
Filing a false report. You know the story.
What are you talking about? What do you mean a false report?
You've been checked out all over town, Evans. Your doctor, your ex-wife, your gambling friends. We talked to them all.
So what? What's that prove anyway?
Proves you were lying, mister. That young officer, Blanchard, he didn't beat you up. There's nothing wrong with your shoulder either. Dr. Chase will vouch for that.
Look, I don't care what he says. I don't care what any of them say. I got my case against that cop. I'm sticking with it. You're not going to talk to me.
Why don't you give it up, Evans? We had a talk with Carl Sweetser.
What did he tell you?
Enough to convince us you're trying to frame Blanchard. We've got statements from people who saw you before you got back home Monday afternoon. They say you were mussed up then. That was at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. You've been telling us Blanchard wasn't at your place till 3 o'clock. Now, how do you explain that?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe I didn't have the time right. My watch could have been off. Doesn't make any difference anyway.
It's going to make a lot of difference. How about getting your coat?
I'm going to call my lawyer first.
That isn't going to do much good. We've got statements from your 2 witnesses, Ray Sherman and the girl. They've admitted the whole thing. Now, you haven't got much of a case left.
I don't care what they say. They're lying. Both of them. They're lying.
You ought to know, mister.
What?
You taught them how.
The story you have just heard was true. The names were changed to protect the innocent.
On September 2nd, trial was held in Superior Court, Department 89, City and County of Los Angeles, State of California. In a moment, the results of that trial.
And now, here is our star, Jack Webb.
Thank you, George Fairman. Friends, I sincerely want you to smoke Fatima and prove Fatima quality. You know, we have a lot of confidence in our king-size cigarette. Enough confidence to make you this money-back guarantee. Buy a pack of Fatimas. Compare them with any other king-size cigarette. If you're not convinced Fatima is better, just return the pack and the unsmoked Fatimas by August 1st, 1952, and we'll give you your money back plus postage. Fatima, Box 37, New York 1. Buy Fatima. Best of all, king-size cigarette.
A complaint was received on George Evans from the city attorney's office for violation of Section 5243 Municipal Code, filing a false report to the police department, a misdemeanor. He received a sentence of 30 days in the county jail. Ray Sherman was tried and found guilty of Section 11500 Health and Safety Code, possession of narcotics. He was sentenced to 1 year in the county jail and 3 years probation. Eleanor Rowland was filed on as a bag addict, Section 11721, Health and Safety Code. She was sentenced to 60 days in the county jail. Officer Harry Blanchard was cleared of the charges pending against him and was reinstated with back pay. You have just heard Dragnet, a series of authentic cases from official files. Technical advice comes from the Office of Chief of Police W.H. Parker, Los Angeles Police Department. Technical advisors Captain Jack Donahoe, Sergeant Marty Wynn, and Sergeant Vance Brasher. Heard tonight were Barney Phillips and Whit Connor. Script by Jim Moser. Music by Walter Schumann. Hal Gibney speaking.
Fatima Cigarettes, best of all king-size cigarettes, has brought you Dragnet, transcribed from Los Angeles. Now, it's Counter Spy on NBC. The story you are about to hear is true. The names have been changed to protect the innocent.
Fatima Cigarettes, best of all king-size cigarettes, brings you Dragnet on both radio and television.
You're a detective sergeant. You're assigned a homicide detail. You receive a complaint about the owner of an apartment building. He signs leases for the apartments, then he threatens to kill the tenants if they move in. Your job? Investigate.
Comparison proves Fatima quality.
Yes, comparison proves Fatima quality.
Compare Fatima with any other king-size cigarette.
1. Fatima's length filters the smoke 85 millimeters for your protection.
2. Fatima's length cools the smoke for your protection.
3. Fatima's length gives you those extra puffs. 21% longer than standard cigarette size.
And you get an extra mild and soothing smoke, plus the added protection of Fatima quality.
Definitely the best quality in its class, but the same price as the cigarette you are now smoking.
In Fatima, the difference is quality. Buy Fatima in the bright, sunny yellow pack. Best of all, king-size cigarettes.
Dragnet, the documented drama of an actual crime. For the next 30 minutes, in cooperation with the Los Angeles Police Department, you will travel step by step on the side of the law through an actual case transcribed from official police files. From beginning to end, from crime to punishment, Dragnet is the story of your police force in action.
It was Wednesday, May 9th. It was hot in Los Angeles. We were working the night watch out of homicide detail. My partner's Ed Jacobs. The boss is Captain Lorman. My name's Friday. It was 6:47 p.m. when I got back to the Capitol Avenue Auto Court. Cottage number 11.
No reason in the world for it. I tried to reason with him. He wouldn't even listen. It's the craziest thing I ever saw.
Yes, ma'am. George, you find the phone all right?
Yeah, I checked the office. Lopey says they picked up Daniels a few minutes ago. They'll bring him downtown now.
Well, they got him, did they? They're going to put him in jail?
Well, it depends, ma'am. It's going to take a little more investigating first.
I don't see what else you need. He threatened us with a gun, me and Doris Ashby. If that isn't a crime, I don't know what is.
A few more questions we'd like to ask you, ma'am, if you don't mind. A couple of things we'd like to clear up.
I told you just how it happened. Doris will tell you the same thing. He's just a crazy old man, if you ask me. Ought to be put away.
Did you ever have any trouble with Mr. Daniels before this afternoon, Miss Cameron?
Excuse me, the baby.
Yes, ma'am.
What is it now, honey? Can't you sleep? You try now, won't you? Daddy will be home pretty soon. That's a good boy. You try and sleep now.
Miss Cameron?
Yes. Oh, you be quiet now. I don't want any trouble from you. You heard me. Be quiet now.
You got your hands full, ma'am.
Don't I know it? A canary, a 4-month-old baby, trying to keep house in an auto court. If I knew it was going to be like this, I never would have left Paso Robles.
You've only been in town a week or so, is that right?
It's closer to 2 weeks. Seems more like 2 months trying to get along in a place like this. A room and a bath, no place to cook, rinse out diapers. It's terrible. I told my husband he should come down here alone, find us a place to live first. Then we could move. No, he had to have it his way.
Mm-hmm. You say your husband made the first contact with Daniels. He gave him a deposit on this apartment, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. The same day he started work at the aircraft plant in the valley. We've been living in Paso Robles since we got married. A month ago, Pete, that's my husband, he got a lead on this aircraft job down here. Him and Ralph came down and signed up for it.
Ralph, who's that, ma'am?
Ralph Ashby. He's Doris's husband. Doris Ashby. She's my best girlfriend. We were neighbors up in Paso Robles.
Oh, I see.
They're not doing much better than we are right now. They're staying in another court up the street. Same thing, room and a bath. Doris is expecting, too, a poor kid. Did you hear me? You be quiet now. You want to wake up the baby?
About the arrangements your husband made with Daniels to lease this apartment, Miss Cameron, when was all this?
A week ago Monday, the day after I moved down here. My husband and Ralph Ashby saw the rental ad in the paper, and they went over and talked to Daniels. He said, all right. He had an apartment for the Ashbys and one for us. Nice places, too.
I see.
Ralph and my husband signed the leases, gave him the first and last month's rent in advance. It was all decided.
Well, how is it you couldn't move in right away, Miss Cameron?
Well, he said he was having the apartment house redecorated. Daniels did, I mean. He told Ralph and my husband the apartments would probably be ready for us on the 8th. That was yesterday. He said the 9th for sure, and that's today.
And you tried to move in this afternoon, and Daniels refused to let you in. Is that it?
I had the movers get all our things out of storage and move them out to the apartment. So did my girlfriend, Doris. The movers were just starting to get our furniture out of the van and move it into the apartment when Mr. Daniels showed up. He acted like a crazy man.
Well, did he give you any reasons why you couldn't move in?
He tried to give us a lot of reasons. None of them made any sense. You could ask Doris. She'll tell you. She was there with me.
Well, what did Daniels say, now, just for instance?
He said a lot of things. First, he told us there was no water in the apartments. It hadn't been turned on yet. He said the gas wasn't turned on either. Well, I knew that was a lie. I was in the apartment late in the morning. Everything was fine. The gas was working, so was the water.
I see.
When I caught him in that lie, he got madder than ever, made some more excuses. Then he started yelling and swearing at me right there on the sidewalk. Said the apartment just wasn't ready yet. I told him to go climb a tree. We signed the lease. We paid the rent. We were moving in anyway. Told the movers to go ahead. Take in the furniture.
Well, what'd Daniel say then?
Nothing. He just got real purple in the face, and he put his hand in his coat pocket, and he took out a gun, pointed it at me and Doris, and I had the baby in my arms. Imagine that.
Mm-hmm. He actually told you he'd shoot you if you tried to move in the apartment, is that right?
In so many words, yes, he did. He threatened the moving men, too. They tried to talk to him. He wouldn't listen. We all tried to talk to him. He didn't make any sense at all. I wasn't going to take any chances with the baby in my arms. Doris and I got in the car and drove away. So did the movers. They left with us. Can't say I blame them either.
Yes, ma'am.
That Daniels must be out of his mind. It's the only thing I can figure. A real nut.
Well, did either you or your husband have any arguments with him at all before this afternoon?
No, everything was fine. This afternoon was the second time I ever spoke to the man.
And he had no objections to your having children or pets in the apartment?
None at all. That's one of the first things my husband told Daniels when he went to look at the apartment. We had a baby and a canary. Daniel said it was all right with him. He didn't object at all.
I understand there's 6 apartments in the building, Miss Cameron, that right?
Yes, that's right. They're all vacant as far as I know. Daniels just bought the building a month ago. That's what he told my husband, anyway. He had the place redecorated, and the work was all done. The apartments are just sitting there. That's why I can't understand it. Why won't he let us move in?
Yes, ma'am.
We paid our money, signed the lease. If he gave us any kind of a good reason why we shouldn't move in, I could understand it. But to keep us out for no reason at all, to stand out there on the sidewalk and threaten to shoot us if we move in, me with a baby in my arms, I don't know. He must be crazy.
You say you were in the apartment this morning, Miss Cameron. Did you notice anything unusual about the place, anything out of the ordinary?
No, nothing.
And you say Daniels couldn't give any reason at all why you shouldn't move in?
Just one. It convinced me.
Yeah.
That gun.
Before we left Mrs. Cameron, we took her crime report and had her sign it, and then we drove back downtown to the squad room where Gene Bechtel and Lloyd Bond were waiting with the suspect, Edward Daniels. They'd already checked him through R&I. He had no previous criminal record. They gave us a .22 caliber H&R revolver along with 6 shells which had been found on the suspect at the time of his arrest. The gun had been loaded. Pawn shop records showed that the weapon had been purchased by the suspect and had been registered in his name. We had stenographer Eleanor Eastlack type up the crime report, and Ed and I took Daniels down the hall to the interrogation room. He was a small, thin man, blue eyes, gray hair.
Don't know what all the fuss is about. I own the building. I can keep people out if I want to.
Well, we saw the lease you signed with the Camerons. The other couple, too, they paid their rent. Why the sudden change of heart?
I don't think that's any of your business. Matter between me and the tenant.
It's our business when you threaten him with a gun, Daniels. Assault with a deadly weapon, that's a felony.
Didn't hurt the woman. Just wanted to scare her, that's all. Just a couple of farmers anyway. Never should have given him the lease in the first place. Lousy kid with him and that bird chirping all the time.
How'd you happen to have that gun with you this afternoon?
Didn't happen to have it. Carry it all the time. It's my business, isn't it? It's registered down here.
Mean you got a permit to carry this gun?
Don't need a permit. It's registered, isn't it?
Who gave you the idea because the gun's registered you can carry it around your pocket?
Friend of mine. Nothing wrong with it, is there?
Having a gun registered is nothing more than keeping a permanent record of it. You can keep the gun in your home or in your office, but it doesn't give you the right to carry it around with you.
Oh? Well, why didn't they tell me that when I had it registered?
You were told, Mr. Daniels. You know that.
Well, I don't remember it.
Doesn't make much difference if you remember or not. Nobody has a permit to threaten people with a gun.
Told you I wasn't going to hurt her. She just kept arguing with me. I'm a sick man, you know. Thought she was going to hit me.
You mean while she was holding that baby in her arms? Now, come off it, Daniels. What's this thing all about?
Told you before. I think that's my business.
You signed a year's lease with the Camerons. You accepted the first and last month's rent. You took their money. You advised them they could move in this afternoon. When they try to move in, you meet them at the front door and threaten them with a gun. Now, what's it all about? None of this makes any sense.
Changed my mind. I'm not ready to rent them out yet.
Well, then why'd you sign that lease with the Camerons? How about it, Mr. Daniels? If there's something in that building you're trying to cover up, you might as well tell us. A couple of men out there now checking it.
You can go ahead and check. I don't care. They won't find anything. Got nothing to hide.
How long you lived here, Daniels?
18, 20 years. Why?
Where'd you live before you came here?
Ohio. Cleveland, Ohio.
You ever been arrested?
Yeah, a couple of traffic tickets. Cop said I went through a stop signal. I wasn't guilty, though. What's the point, anyway? What are you trying to get at? Are you trying to force me to let those people in that apartment?
I'm not trying to force you into anything, Daniels. Business about the lease is a civil matter. That's between you and the Camerons.
And what are you holding me here for?
We told you. You threatened that woman with a gun. She signed an ADW report.
What do you mean, ADW?
Assault with a deadly weapon. Now, that's a pretty serious charge, Daniels.
Didn't hurt the woman. Didn't even touch her.
Pointed the gun at her, didn't you?
Yeah.
The gun was loaded, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Capable of being fired?
Yeah, but I wasn't going to shoot her, I told you. Just wanted to scare her off, get her out of there.
Uh-huh.
It's the truth. I wasn't going to shoot her. What do I have to do to convince you?
You don't have to convince us.
What do you mean? Who do I have to convince?
You got your choice, a judge or a jury. Ed and I took the suspect, Edward Daniels, down to the main jail where we booked him in on suspicion of 467 PC ADW. Before he was locked up, Daniels asked us if we would take the keys to his car and the keys to his apartment house to an Oliver Randall, an employee of his who acted as a janitor and general handyman at 2 other apartment houses Daniels owned. We told him we would. After we left the main jail, we checked with the office, and then we drove out to the location of the apartment house to interview the neighbors and deliver the keys to Daniels' handyman, Oliver Randall. Other than telling us that they considered Mr. Daniels a little eccentric, the neighbors were unable to give us any additional information that might help us in the prosecution. After we finished talking to the neighbors, we went across the street to the apartment house. There were lights burning in the upper rear apartment. We tried the bell, but there was no answer. From the set of keys Daniels had given us, we found the one that fit the door and let ourselves in. We heard somebody moving around on the floor above us. We went up and found a man there who identified himself as Oliver Randall. He appeared nervous and upset. There were papers and rags scattered over the floor of the room.
Oh, yeah, I was just cleaning up here. Mr. Daniels told me to be sure and clean these up, papers and junk.
I see. Well, here's some keys for you, Randall. Daniels asked to get them to you.
Oh, yeah, apartment house keys. Mr. Daniels was supposed to meet me here. He said 8 o'clock. I think that's what he said. I wonder where he is. You know where he is?
Yeah, he's in jail.
Oh, what's he doing in jail? Did he do something wrong?
He's had a complaint filed against him, assault with a deadly weapon.
What happened? He got mad at somebody? Mr. Daniels got an awful bad temper. When he gets mad at somebody, he doesn't forget it. I know. I worked for him.
How long have you worked for him, Randall?
I don't know. A long time. Maybe 5 years. I forget.
You say Daniels has a bad temper. Have you ever known him to be violent, Randall?
How's that?
Well, have you ever known him to be violent? I mean, have you ever known him to hurt anyone?
Well, I don't know. I don't remember. A lot of times he says he's going to do things. I work for him, you know. A lot of times he gets mad at me. He says I don't work fast enough or I don't do the right things. He always carries his gun, you know. Once he said he was going to shoot me, I was pretty scared.
You live with Mr. Daniels, do you?
No, I have a room downstairs in another apartment house. He owns a place over on South Hoover. It's a nice room. It's got a window in it.
You're on a regular salary. Is that the way you work?
Yeah, $15 a week. I get the room free, too. It's not bad.
You ever been arrested, Randall?
Me? No, I've never been arrested.
You ever been in the state hospital, any kind of an institution?
No, I was up at Camarillo for a couple of years. I didn't like it too much. I came down here to live with my sister. She's dead now. She died about 4 years ago. She's the one that got me this job, you know.
That's so?
Oh, yeah. This isn't a bad job at all. Jobs are pretty hard to get now. That's what Mr. Daniels says. Real tough to get a good job now. That's why I do what I'm told. I better get on fixing up this place.
Well, how'd all these rags and papers get here, Randall? The painters leave them behind?
I don't know. I guess so. I guess somebody left them here.
We understood the apartments were already cleaned up. They were ready to move into.
What's that?
I say we understood the apartments were all fixed up, that they were ready for the tenants to move right into.
Oh, I don't know. I wouldn't know about that. Mr. Daniels takes care of renting the places. I just help him. I do what he tells me.
Joe?
Yeah?
You notice that smell? Seems to be stronger out in the hall.
Yeah, I think I do. How long's it been since the painters were working here, Randall? Do you know that?
Painters? I don't know. A couple days, I guess. What's the matter?
That's a pretty strong smell. Might be paint there, something like that. Don't you notice it?
Oh, yeah, I've been wondering about that. I noticed it when I came in. It might be from upstairs, the attic. Painters were working up there, too, I think.
Don't you think you ought to check it, see what it is?
Mr. Daniels didn't tell me to. I guess I better, though. Smells pretty strong. I guess I better see what it is.
Well, how do you get to the attic from here?
Down the end of the hall, there's a stairway there. It goes right up into the attic. I'll show you.
All right, fine.
Yeah, smells like gasoline or something.
All the apartments are vacant, is that right? No one living in the building at all?
Yeah, that's right. We go up the stairs here. Mr. Daniels had the whole place worked over. Nobody here at all right now. I guess he'll be moving in pretty soon. Going to be a lot of work. Got the other 2 apartment houses to take care of, and there's going to be this place. It's going to be a lot of work.
Daniels hire anyone else besides yourself to help out with the work, I mean?
No, I don't think so. Just me. I keep pretty busy. Here's the attic.
Yeah, this must be where it's coming from.
Yeah, it's strong enough to knock you over, isn't it?
The light switch is over here. Just a minute.
Yeah, it's sure a mess. Papers, boxes, pile of old rags.
That 5-gallon can there on the floor.
Kerosene.
Yeah, it's just about empty, too.
It's all spilled all over the floor. Mr. Daniels ain't going to like that. He's going to get mad.
You usually keep this stuff up here, do you, Randall?
No, I guess it was with the painter's stuff. Those cans and things on the table there, I guess it got knocked off and spilled. Spilled all over the place, didn't it?
Well, how come the painting crew didn't take their stuff with them when they left? All this equipment here. They're all finished with the job, aren't they?
I guess so. You'd have to ask Mr. Daniels about that. They're all finished on the inside. I know that. They have the outside to do, though. Maybe that's why they left their stuff.
Well, it's not a very safe way to leave it. Rags, papers, look here, kerosene spilled all over. You better get this place cleaned up first, don't you think, Randall?
Well, I don't know. I sure wish Mr. Daniels was here. You won't let him know, will you?
What do you mean, let him know what?
Don't tell him I'll let you see the attic, huh?
9:35 p.m. Ed and I left the handyman, Oliver Randall, at his apartment house, went outside and got in the car. Neither one of us could find any explanation for it, but we both had a hunch there was something wrong with the setup. We drove to a neighborhood service station, called the office, and told them that we were going to stake the apartment house. We drove back and found a place to park where we could keep the building under surveillance without being seen. We waited. 10 p.m., 10:30, 11 o'clock. At a few minutes past 11, we saw Randall come out of the front door of the apartment, get in a blue sedan, and drive off. We followed him to an apartment building on West Pico and saw him enter a rear door. We waited. At 12:15 a.m., Ed got to a phone, called Captain Bernard at the business office, and notified him of our location. At 12:45 a.m., two men arrived to relieve us, and we briefed them on the facts. We drove back to the office, made out a 15.7 to Captain Lorman, and signed out. At 4 o'clock the next afternoon, we reported back in for work. We checked the book and found a message that the suspect, Edward Daniels, had been released from jail that morning on a writ, bail $2,500. The writ was returnable Thursday, May 10th. There was also a message in the book for us to contact Daniels' attorney, Richard Tiernan. Ed put in the call.
Yes, sir. Uh-huh. I see. What's that? Yeah, I know. All right, Mr. Tiernan. Yeah, thank you. Goodbye. You were right, Joe.
What do you mean?
Daniels' lawyer wanted to know how serious the charges are. He says Daniels is pretty upset. Seems he had some trouble lately. His insurance company.
Well, what's the matter? Did he have an accident?
The insurance company doesn't seem to think it was an accident. Happened 2 months ago at an apartment house over on South Union.
Yeah.
Burned down.
You are listening to Dragnet. Authentic stories of your police force in action.
Fatima, America's first largest-selling blended cigarette. Now, best of all, king-size cigarettes.
Prove it yourself today. Compare Fatima with any other king-size cigarette.
1. Fatima's length filters the smoke 85 millimeters for your protection.
2. Fatima's length cools the smoke for your protection.
3. Fatima's length gives you those extra puffs, 21% longer than standard cigarette size.
And in Fatima, you get an extra mild and soothing smoke, plus the added protection of Fatima quality.
To show our confidence in Fatima, we make this money-back guarantee to every king-size cigarette smoker.
Buy a pack of Fatimas. Enjoy Fatima quality, extra mildness, and superbly blended tobaccos.
If you're not convinced Fatima is better than the king-size cigarette you're now smoking, just return the pack and the unsmoked Fatimas before August 1st, 1952, and we'll give you your money back plus postage. Fatima, Box 37, New York 1.
Remember, because of its quality, its extra mildness, its better flavor and aroma, more smokers now insist on Fatima than ever before.
Insist on the best. Fatima, extra mild and soothing, plus the added protection of Fatima quality. Smoke Fatima. Best of all, king-size cigarettes.
Thursday, May 10th, 4:30 p.m. We contacted the fire department's arson squad to find out if the fire at Daniels' apartment house on South Union Avenue 2 months before was under investigation. After checking back, they told us investigators from the arson squad had found a large amount of kerosene to be present in some of the burned timbers found in the debris after the fire was put out. They said that Mr. Daniels had admitted after the fire that the apartment building had been recently redecorated and that kerosene, paint, and other inflammables had been stored in the attic of the building. Ed and I contacted the insurance adjuster handling the case, a Snyder Peebles, and he told us there wasn't any doubt in his mind that the fire at Daniels' apartment house 2 months before was of incendiary origin. But he said so far the investigators were unable to prove it. The one thing that seemed to puzzle him was if Daniels planned on burning down the building, why did he go to the trouble and expense of redecorating first? Well, as soon as it was dark, Ed and I drove out, relieved the men on stakeout at the apartment house on West Pico, where the handyman, Oliver Randall, had his room. They reported no unusual activity during the day. 7:32 p.m., Randall came out of the apartment house, got in a car, and drove off. We followed him.
If we got this Randall made right, it shouldn't be too long before we find out. Daniels is using him to work something out. Pretty sure we can count on that.
Yeah, maybe. I'll watch it, Ed. He's turning down Union.
Yeah.
He's pulling up ahead. Don't crowd him.
There's a good spot here. Shouldn't be able to see us.
All right, pull up in here.
All right.
That's fine. He's getting out of the car. He's going over to the house.
Down the driveway. He's going around back. He's out of sight now.
All right, let's go.
Still no lights in the place. Oh, yeah, there they go, in the basement.
All right, easy. Let's take it easy.
All right.
Yeah, I think I can see the back door from here. All right, come on, easy now.
Mm-hmm. What is it?
All right, easy with this door, Ed. Don't let it bang.
Uh-huh. Where now?
Sounds like somebody upstairs, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
All right, come on, watch your step. Come on, next floor up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's up in the attic. Come on.
Mm-hmm.
All right, come on.
Uh-huh.
Through this door. Back in the corner, Ed.
I see him. All right, hold it, you.
What's the matter?
There's a fire right over in the corner. I'll get it. Hold on to him.
Right.
Well, don't put it out.
You need any help, Joe? You getting it all right?
No, I'm getting it all right. Just a minute. There, I got it.
Okay. You want to get the lights?
I got it. All right, Randall, what's the story?
He told me to do it. He told me to come back tonight and burn the whole place down.
Who told you?
He said, Ollie, you go back to the place, to the attic, light a match, that's all, and then get out. Mr. Daniels, that's just what he said.
Daniels told you to do this?
He told me just light a fire and nobody'd know. He said there wasn't going to be any trouble. No trouble at all.
Well, it gives you the edge, doesn't it?
No trouble, he said.
Yeah, well, next time you see him, you can call him a liar. 8:50 p.m. After making sure that the place was secure and that there was no danger of fire from the recent arson attempt, Ed and I took the suspect, Oliver Randall, outside and put him in the car where we questioned him. He made no attempt to disguise the fact that he had been directed by his regular employer, Edward Daniels, to commit arson by setting fire to the attic of the apartment house. In addition, he told us that Daniels had threatened him with bodily harm if he refused to obey the order and set fire to the building.
He had this gun, you know, Mr. Daniels did. He always had it with him. I was scared of it, I don't mind telling you.
Uh-huh. Well, he threatened to kill you if you didn't do what he wanted, that it?
Yeah, I guess so. He used to get mad a lot of the time, and he had this gun. He always had the gun. He'd get mad at me and tell me he was going to shoot me. I'm afraid of guns.
How about the fire at the other apartment house, Ollie, the one over on South Union Avenue?
Yeah, that was a big fire.
Did you start that one?
Daniels told me there was nobody living there. He said nobody'd get hurt. Nobody did get hurt, did they?
Did you start the fire?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess I did.
Mr. Daniels tell you to do it?
He said it was his building. He owned it. He could do anything with it he wanted to. I didn't want to do it. He told me I'd have to. He said he'd hurt me with that gun, and he said he'd fire me, too. I didn't want to lose my job.
You knew you were doing wrong, didn't you, Ollie?
Well, I guess I did, yeah. What could I do, though? I didn't want to lose my job. Good jobs aren't too easy to get nowadays. You know that.
Where's Mr. Daniels now, do you know?
You're not going to tell him what I told you, are you? He said not to say anything about it. He said nobody believed me anyway. Nobody. He said he'd tell everybody I was a liar. Said they'd believe him before they'd believe me.
Well, where's Daniels now?
If I tell you, you won't let him hurt me, will you?
No, we won't let him hurt you. You're going to have to help us out, though.
What do you want me to do?
I'd like to find out where Daniels is first.
He's in a movie over on Pico by his house. He's waiting for me.
You mean he's waiting for you in the show?
See, in the center section, 10 rows from the back. He's waiting for me now.
Well, how's it you're supposed to meet him there?
I don't know. He said if anybody wanted to know where we were tonight, this would prove we didn't start the fire. We were at the show. I was supposed to start the fire and then go to the show and meet him, 10 rows from the back, the center section.
You want to show us where this movie is, Ollie?
Yeah, okay. Mr. Daniels won't tell you anything. No, he's going to be mad. He won't tell you anything.
Well, that's where we need your help, Ollie.
What do you mean?
We'll let him tell you. 9:44 p.m. Ed and I, along with the suspect, Oliver Randall, drove to the movie house on West Pico. On the way, we explained to Randall what he was supposed to do. 9:55 p.m. We parked our car a half a block from the movie house, bought 3 tickets, and went inside. The feature picture was still on. There wasn't much of a crowd. We sent Randall down the aisle ahead of us and watched him move into the 10th row and sit down next to somebody. Ed and I followed him down and found seats in the row directly behind him. We recognized the man sitting next to Randall as Edward Daniels.
Oh, Mr. Daniels, I did it just the way you told me up in the attic. It was okay.
Nobody saw you? You didn't have any trouble at all?
No, it was okay. I don't feel so good about it, though.
What do you mean? What are you talking about?
I don't know. Maybe somebody might find out. Don't you think we'd get in trouble if they found out?
You just keep your mouth shut. I'll attend to that. Nobody's going to find out.
All right, Daniels, you mind coming outside? We'd like to talk to you.
What are you doing here?
Come on, we'll talk outside.
What's this all about?
We'll let you tell us.
All right, what do you want? You arresting me?
That's right, mister.
Why? What's it supposed to be this time?
Think you know arson, conspiracy. Caught Randall here, caught him right in the act. He told us the whole story.
What? Holly? What story? What is this?
I told you I didn't want to do it, Mr. Daniels. I told you we'd get in trouble.
Fool, stupid fool. Should have known better.
Yeah, you should have.
Just 2 questions for you, Daniels. Why'd you burn down your own property? Why'd you redecorate the buildings first?
I never forgot it. Told him when it happened, I wouldn't forget it as long as I lived.
What do you mean, forget what?
24 years ago, I was just starting out. A small store back in Ohio burned down. Real fire. Lousy insurance company that wouldn't believe me. Had to sue. Lost the whole thing. Had to start all over again. I told him I'd never forget it. Told him I'd make him pay.
And you've been nursing this grudge for 24 years?
Why not? Why shouldn't I? Lost everything I had.
Well, why'd you redecorate the apartment houses if you planned to burn them down?
Simple. Gave me a good excuse. Could have all those things stored in the buildings. Paint, kerosene. Besides, you'd think I'd burn down the building right after I got done redecorating. Not a bad idea. Worked pretty good, didn't it?
Yeah, you're going to jail. You figure it.
The story you have just heard was true. The names were changed to protect the innocent.
On August 18th, trial was held in Superior Court, Department 86, City and County of Los Angeles, State of California. In a moment, the results of that trial.
And now, here's our star, Jack Webb.
Thank you, George Fenneman. Friends, comparisons are often very helpful in modern police work. Now, for instance, a suspect may be identified by comparing his M.O., or method of operation, with the known facts of a case. Comparisons are important to you in choosing your king-size cigarette. Compare Fatima for quality. You'll find Fatima's length filters the smoke 85 millimeters for your protection. Cools the smoke for your protection. Fatima's length gives you those extra puffs, 21% longer than standard cigarette size. And you get an extra mild and soothing smoke, plus the added protection of Fatima quality. Buy Fatima. I'm convinced that you'll agree Fatima is the best of all king-size cigarettes.
Edward John Daniels was tried and convicted of 2 counts of conspiracy and 1 count of arson and received the sentence as prescribed by law. Conspiracy is punishable by imprisonment in the state penitentiary for not more than 2 years. Arson is punishable by a prison term of not less than 1 or more than 5 years. Daniels' accomplice, Oliver Randall, was examined by 3 psychiatrists appointed by the court and was found to be mentally incompetent. He was placed in a state hospital for the mentally deficient. The charge of assault with a deadly weapon against Edward Daniels was dismissed. You have just heard Dragnet, a series of authentic cases from official files. Technical advice comes from the Office of Chief of Police W.H. Parker, Los Angeles Police Department. Technical advisors, Captain Jack Donahoe, Sergeant Marty Wynn, Sergeant Vance Brasher. Heard tonight were Barney Phillips and Vic Perrin. Script by Jim Moser. Music by Walter Schumann. Hal Gibney speaking.
Fatima Cigarettes, best of all king-size cigarettes, has brought you Dragnet, transcribed from Los Angeles. Now, it's Counter Spy on NBC. The story you are about to hear is true. The names have been changed to protect the innocent.
Fatima Cigarettes, best of all king-size cigarettes, brings you Dragnet on both radio and television.
You're a detective sergeant. You're assigned to robbery detail. 2 convicts escaped from the state penitentiary. They're heading for your city. They're armed. They've boasted they won't be taken alive. Your job? Get them.
In Fatima, the difference is quality.
Yes, in Fatima, the difference is quality.
Prove it yourself today. Compare Fatima with any other king-size cigarette.
1. Fatima's length filters the smoke 85 millimeters for your protection.
2. Fatima's length cools the smoke for your protection.
3. Fatima's length gives you those extra puffs, 21% longer than standard cigarette size.
And in Fatima, you get an extra mild and soothing smoke, plus the added protection of Fatima quality.
Definitely the best quality in its class, but the same price as the cigarette you're now smoking.
Buy Fatima in the bright, sunny yellow pack. Best of all, king-size cigarettes.
Dragnet, the documented drama of an actual crime. For the next 30 minutes, in cooperation with the Los Angeles Police Department, you will travel step by step on the side of the law through an actual case transcribed from official police files. From beginning to end, from crime to punishment, Dragnet is the story of your police force in action.
It was Wednesday, October 6th. It was cloudy in Los Angeles. We were working a day watch out of robbery detail. My partner's Ed Jacobs. The boss is Captain Didion. My name's Friday. We were on the way out from the office, and it was 2:40 p.m. when we got to Kesterson Boulevard. Number 1256.
Sounds like she's having a party, huh?
Yeah, try it again, huh? Maybe they can't hear it inside.
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Police officers, ma'am. You Ruth Thompson?
Yes, that's right. What is it?
My name's Friday. This is my partner, Sergeant Jacobs, Central Robbery. We'd like to talk to you a few minutes if we could.
Well, I have a party going on right now. A few of my friends are over. What'd you want, Sergeant?
About an Andy Powell, Miss Thompson. I understand you know him.
I did know him, yes. I haven't seen him for a long time, 3 or 4 years anyway.
Mind if we ask a few questions about him? It won't take long.
All right. Come in, please.
Thank you. We're sorry to disturb you, ma'am. It's pretty important or we wouldn't hold you up.
Oh, it's all right. Down the hall here.
All right.
We can talk in the kitchen if you don't mind. It's my girlfriend's birthday today. Thought it'd be nice to have a little party for her.
Oh, I see.
Chair there, if you like. Oh, here, let me wipe it off. We spilled a drink on it. Probably Danny always spilling a drink.
Suppose you know about Andy Powell, Miss Thompson, what happened this morning?
What's that?
About Andy Powell. You heard what happened this morning?
Just what I read in the morning paper. They said he broke out of San Quentin, another man with him. It's true, then? He did break out?
Yes, ma'am. That's the information we have. There's an all-points bulletin out on him.
Well, I don't want to get involved in it. It's none of my business. Andy doesn't mean anything to me.
Well, at the time he was sent up, you were engaged to Powell. Is that right?
Yes, but that was before he got into trouble, before he went to San Quentin. I saw him after the trial. I told him how I felt about it. I told him it wasn't any use.
You mean you called it off, that is?
There wasn't much else to do. It was robbery, 5 years to life. It wasn't the first time either. Andy knew it'd be a long time, so die. Really, I had to tell him. I had to call it off.
We understand you were on Powell's correspondence list while he was up at Quentin. You wrote to him, did you?
Yes, the first couple of months. We haven't written lately, though. There wasn't any point to it, no point at all.
Well, when was the last time you heard from Powell, Miss Thompson? The last time you wrote to him?
Oh, 8 or 10 months. At least that. As I say, there wasn't much sense in going on. Andy knew he was in there for a long time. He couldn't expect me to wait all that time. Matter of fact, he said he didn't expect it. He told me that.
You been up to visit Powell recently, Miss Thompson?
No, I haven't.
Well, then you haven't seen him since he went up to Quentin. You'll swear to that?
Why do I have to swear to it? I already told you. Andy doesn't mean anything to me. It didn't make sense. It's all over. I'm not even a relative. Why do I have to swear to anything?
You haven't seen Powell since he went up to Quentin, is that right?
Miss Thompson, is that right?
What if I saw him or if I didn't see him? What difference does it make? It's none of my business.
Oh, did you say him, Miss Thompson?
What difference does it make? I don't have anything to do with him. He doesn't mean anything to me. I told you.
Did you see him?
This morning.
When?
Late this morning, about 10:30.
Was he alone?
No, another man was with him.
Who was the other man? You recognize him?
Bert Selby. That's the way he introduced him. He didn't try to hide it. Some fellow he broke out of jail with.
What'd they want? Why were they here?
Clothes, money. Looked like the devil, both of them. Terrible.
What'd you give them?
They asked for him. Not that silly. Didn't trust me any more than they trust you. And he had a knife. I tried to tell him I didn't have any money. He didn't believe me. Came at me with that knife. I gave him the money.
How much?
About $17, $18, some loose change. They emptied my purse. They took it all.
Anything else?
Clothes, a couple of suits of my father's. He died last year. They took his gun, too. Never thought Andy'd be that way. It was terrible.
What kind of a gun was it, Miss Thompson?
Colt revolver, 38, I think. They took that and the clothes and the money. It's about 10:30 this morning.
Well, how come you didn't report that? You say you knew about the escape. You knew they were wanted, didn't you?
Why should I? They warned me about it. They threatened me. They said they'd come back and get me if I told the police. Look, I don't want to get mixed up in this. I'm engaged to a nice fellow now. We want to get married. I don't want to get mixed up in this. Andy Powell's nothing to me.
Did you watch the two men when they left the house here? You noticed if they drove off in the car?
No, I didn't. I just shut the door and prayed I was rid of them. Took my money, food, my dad's clothes. Don't make it any tougher, huh? Please.
Well, it's not a question of that, ma'am. We have to find them. We're going to need all the cooperation we can get.
I told you everything I could, honestly. They said they'd come back and kill me if I even talked to you. I can't do any more. I sure hope you don't find him.
How's that?
When Andy went out the door, it's the last thing he said. He said if the cops ever found him, there was going to be a fight. Terrible look on his face.
Yeah.
He said you'd never take him alive.
The APB had come in a few minutes before 8 o'clock that morning. It was from the warden's office, San Quentin. The two suspects had been assigned to an early morning work detail at the penitentiary, and they were first reported missing at the 7 a.m. count. Number one suspect was Andrew A. Powell, WMA, 29 years, 5'9", 175 pounds. Brown hair, blue eyes, tan complexion. Suspect number two, Bertram O. Selby, WMA, 31 years, 5'11", 160 pounds, blonde hair, gray eyes, tan complexion. Both of them had long criminal records. Both of them had been serving time for armed robbery. They'd used guns before. We figured if they had to, they'd use them again. Before we left Powell's ex-girlfriend, Ruth Thompson, we called the office and arranged for a 24-hour stakeout on her home in case the escaped prisoners returned. We also made arrangements for a stakeout at the downtown restaurant where she was employed as cashier. We passed along the information which the Thompson girl had given us, and a broadcast and an APB was gotten out on the suspects. 4:05 p.m., Ed and I continued making the rounds of all the known friends and associates of the escaped prisoners. We failed to come up with any more leads. 5:50 p.m., we went back to the city hall.
Clouding up again, huh? Over there in the east?
Yeah, the paper says rain tonight and tomorrow. We can sure use it.
No, I can't.
What's the matter?
Haven't had a chance to get the shoemakers yet. Here. Look at that. Hole in my shoe. Been meaning to get them half-soled. I keep forgetting.
Yeah. Don't tell me that's the only pair of shoes you got.
No, I got another pair at home. They're not comfortable, though, not broken in. What's the trouble with this job?
What do you mean?
Shoes. You get a new pair, start wearing them around, it happens every time.
Huh?
No sooner get the tops broken in, the soles wear out. It's a vicious circle.
Yeah.
Hi. What's the word?
No, hi, Jess. Anything in the book for us, you don't?
I don't know. I don't think so. I'll check it. How'd you two make out? Any luck?
Oh, not too bad, Jess. We know Powell and Selby were in town this morning. Good chance they're still here.
Mm-hmm.
Any kickback on that last all points we got out?
Well, nothing so far. Gaffney and Ricketts are running down a couple of possibles right now. One of them might pan out. Nothing in the book, Joe. We're clear. Just saying, Ed, on this Powell and Selby thing, got a couple of possibles we're checking on. Both calls came in the last hour. One was a holdup, Olympic near Vermont.
Mm-hmm.
Pawn shop there. Two men pulled it off, slugged the owner, took clothes, money, 12-gauge shotgun.
Well, how about descriptions on the men?
Well, they seem to be fairly close. What I got over the phone, Gaffney and Ricketts are out talking to the victim. They took mugs of Powell and Selby along, waiting for their call back now. You said you had two calls. What was the other one? 211 and slugging out on Hollywood Boulevard, just above Western. A couple of thieves knocked over a dry goods store. Some take. Clothes and money. Descriptions are pretty close there, too. Hollywood division's covering. Waiting for their call back. Does anyone want to smoke?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Thompson girl's the only one who had anything, huh? None of the others could help you out? Yeah, that's about the size of it. Apparently Powell doesn't have too many connections in town. Selby has even less. No more than a dozen names on that list, were they, Joe? Friends, relatives?
An even dozen. A couple of bars Powell was known to hang out when he was in town. Checked them out, too. Nothing.
Yeah. Well, they sure made a beeline here after they broke Quentin. It's a good 500-mile stretch. If they don't have the connections here to help them, then what's the big attraction?
Yeah.
They could have some help lined up we don't know about. Somebody to hide them out, keep them in groceries for a while.
It's possible they're making a run for one of the border towns, Tijuana, Mexicali. Maybe Powell figured on more help from the Thompson girl. Clothes and money. Enough to get him and Selby over into Mexico, huh?
She said all they got was $17. Had to cut corners to make it on that. Robbery, Gonzalez. Oh, yeah, Jack. You sure? Yeah, okay, fine, thanks. Bye.
What do you got?
Jack Ricketts. He and Gaffney just finished talking to the owner of the pawn shop that was held up, the one on Olympic.
Yeah.
They gave him a handful of mug shots to check. He tabbed two of them.
Mm-hmm.
Powell and Selby.
6:30 p.m. A supplementary broadcast and an APB was gotten out on the two suspects, and the Record Bureau's photocopy room turned out 2,000 copies of Powell's and Selby's mugshot for distribution. At 9 p.m., a theater on Western Avenue was robbed of $192. Powell and Selby were again identified as the holdup men. The robbery victim, the manager of the theater, said that both men were armed, one with a .38 revolver, the other with a sawed-off shotgun. Neither the manager nor the two witnesses were able to tell us how the thieves got away from the scene of the crime, if they were on foot or if they had a car. 11:20 p.m. A hotshot call came through on a holdup at a liquor store and delicatessen down on South Central Avenue. For the third time that night, Powell and Selby were identified from their mugshots as the holdup men. They'd used the same weapons, the revolver that they'd taken from the Thompson girls' home and the shotgun that they picked up in the robbery of the Olympic Boulevard pawn shop. Again, the victims were unable to tell us how the suspects got away, whether on foot or by car. Midnight, 1 a.m. There were still no replies to supplementary broadcasts and bulletins which had been gotten out. 1:25 a.m. Another hotshot call came through, this time on a holdup and a slugging at the 2050 Room, a small nightclub on West 9th Street. Ed and I handled the call. For the fourth time, the bandits were identified as Powell and Selby, and for the fourth time, they'd made good their escape. We interviewed the manager of the 2050 Room, a Herman Saunders.
Quite a few people in here at the time of the holdup, Mr. Saunders?
Yeah, good for Thursday night, 30 or 40 anyway. We sure left in a hurry. This is the second time this year we've been knocked over. Insurance company isn't going to like it too much.
Well, how much money did they take altogether, do you know?
A little less than $600 from the cash register, mostly currency, some rolls of dimes and quarters. Got another $150 from my wallet. That's about it. They didn't take anything from the customers.
Are you sure about that identification, are you? There's no chance of a mistake there?
I'm positive. I'd know Andy Powell anywhere. I should know him. Like I told you, he worked for me a year and a half.
I was here at 2050?
Yeah, he worked behind the bar. Good man, too. I don't get it at all.
You mean why it went bad?
Well, yeah, that, too. What I mean is if you're going to hold up a place, you don't pick a joint where everybody knows you. I spotted Andy as soon as I saw him at the bar. So did a couple of the waiters.
He wasn't wearing any kind of a mask? He didn't make any attempt to disguise himself?
No, stood there big as life, him and this other fella. Didn't waste any time either. They pulled the guns, lined up everybody in the place, and stood them against that wall over there.
Mm-hmm.
Real Wild West style. Took over the whole place. Acted real wild, Andy and this other fella. Must be crazy.
Nobody was hurt? Didn't slug anyone?
I slapped a few of the customers around. I thought for a while they were really going to get rough. They had us lined up against the wall. Andy was acting tough. Had this knife with him, good 4-inch blade. Went right down the line, jabbing people with it, threatening them. Must be out of his mind.
Well, you say he didn't take any money from the customers?
Yeah, that's right. They worked it pretty fast. Emptied the cash register, then my wallet. Then they beat it. Never so glad to see anybody go in my life.
Well, how'd they get away? Do you have any idea on that?
Old guy who sells papers down the corner, he says he thinks he saw a car pull away right after the stick-up. Said it was a blue sedan. Don't know how much stock you can put in it. The old man's eyes aren't what they used to be.
Did you know Powell pretty well when he was working here, Mr. Saunders? I mean, did you know any of his friends, people he used to run with?
No, I didn't know him that well. He worked for me, that's all. I still have his old address, the place he was living when he worked for me. I can get it if you want.
Yeah, if you would, please.
Sure, no trouble. I just don't get it. Don't get it at all. Of all the joints in town he could have held up, he had to pick mine, the one place he'd be recognized. You think he'd have better sense, wouldn't you?
You'd think so, yeah.
How'd they ever hire a guy as dumb as that Powell holding up the place he worked for? Biggest mistake he ever made.
No, he made a bigger one yesterday.
Yeah, what was that?
When he broke prison. 2:05 a.m. Further investigation at the scene of the latest holdup failed to turn up any new leads. While Ed and I checked on Powell's former address, which we'd gotten from the owner of the 2050 Room, Gonzalez, Ricketts, and Gaffney continued checking the immediate neighborhood. In addition, a special detail from Metro Division was sent in to cover the entire area. The suspect's former address turned out to be a rooming house up on West Temple Street. The landlady remembered Andy Powell, but she had no forwarding address on him, and she could tell us nothing about his former friends and associates. We checked back with Gonzalez, Ricketts, and Gaffney, and they told us that besides the old newspaper vendor, the counterman at the coffee shop near the 2050 Room had also spotted a blue sedan leaving the vicinity of the nightclub shortly after the holdup. He was able to give them the make, the model, and a partial license number. A supplementary all points had been gotten out on it immediately, and the information relayed to DMV and auto theft detail. 3:10 a.m. Ed and I completed our assignment in the investigation and went back to the office to check for instructions from Captain Didion.
Can't see how we'd be much use out on the street the way things stand now, can you?
No, I don't.
Everything's covered I can think of. Supplementary all points is out. Detail from Metro's working in the neighborhood.
It's funny, isn't it?
What's that?
Well, this Andy Powell going back to that place he used to work and holding it up, that doesn't make any sense at all, does it?
That's for sure. Must have known somebody was going to recognize him. Couldn't have been a coincidence.
Well, there's only one way I can figure it. They don't care, either one of them. They got their money now, a car. They both got guns. They're out to go as far as they can.
Oh, hi, Jess.
Hi.
You just get back in?
Yeah. Hi, Joe.
Right. You as tired as you sound?
Worse. Fair piece of news, though.
Yeah, what's that?
Powell and Selby, they just found their hideout.
After 3 hours of canvassing the general downtown area, particularly in the vicinity of the last holdup, a team of men working with a special detail from Metropolitan Division interviewed a desk clerk in a small hotel on South Broadway who recognized the suspect's mugshots. The two of them had registered early the morning before under the names J.E. Dennis and Harold Thompson, both from Fresno, California. The hotel room was searched, and 2 San Quentin inmate uniforms were found stuffed under the mattress of the bed. After the room was processed for fingerprints, there was no doubt that the recent occupants were Powell and Selby. The clerk had no idea when they were supposed to return. The hotel was staked out immediately, and the citywide search for the escaped prisoners went on. The following day, Thursday, October 7th, 11:30 a.m., still no sign of the suspects, no further reports or leads as to their whereabouts. The search went on. Ed and I signed back in at the office. 10 minutes later, a long-distance phone call came in for us.
When was that, Mort? What's that? Yeah, close enough, right. We'll let you know, yeah. Bye. Mort Gear down to San Diego.
Yeah, what do you want?
One of the traffic officers was checking a car about 8 o'clock this morning, 586 parking. Blue sedan, fits close to the description of the escape car.
Well, it's a pretty common model, isn't it? Did he say anything else?
Traffic man checked the inside of the car, glove compartment, found half a dozen rolls of dimes and quarters, same name stamped on all of them.
Yeah.
2050 room.
You are listening to Dragnet, authentic stories of your police force in action.
Comparison proves Fatima quality. Prove Fatima quality yourself today.
Compare Fatima with any other king-size cigarette.
1. Fatima's length filters the smoke 85 millimeters for your protection.
2. Fatima's length cools the smoke for your protection.
3. Fatima's length gives you those extra puffs, 21% longer than standard cigarette size.
And in Fatima, you get an extra mild and soothing smoke, plus the added protection of Fatima quality.
Friends, to show our confidence in Fatima, we make this money-back guarantee. Buy a pack of Fatimas. Enjoy Fatima quality, extra mildness, and superbly blended tobaccos. If you're not convinced Fatima is better than the king-size cigarette you're now smoking, just return the pack and the unsmoked Fatimas by August 1st, 1952, for your money back plus postage. Fatima, Box 37, New York 1.
Remember, because of its quality, its extra mildness, its better flavor and aroma, more smokers now insist on Fatima than ever before.
Insist on the best. Fatima, extra mild and soothing, plus the added protection of Fatima quality. Smoke Fatima. Best of all, king-size cigarettes.
October 7th, Thursday, 1 p.m. After we got the report from Lieutenant Mort Gear that the escaped car, along with a few dollars of the stolen money, had been located in San Diego that morning, Ed and I had a meeting with Captain Didion. It was beginning to look like our first hunch was right. Powell and Selby's 24-hour campaign of holdups in the Los Angeles area had netted them a fresh change of clothes and more than enough money to live on for a while. With the locating of the escape car in San Diego, it looked like the suspects were apparently taking the next logical step, a fast move over the international border into Mexico, a distance of less than 20 miles from San Diego. Probably they figured once over the line they had a good chance of losing themselves. 1:40 p.m. On Captain Didion's orders, Jess Gonzalez, Ed, and I got in the car and headed south for San Diego with a supply of mug shots of the escaped prisoners. We got there a few minutes after 4 p.m. We went directly to the San Diego PD, where we contacted Sergeant Tony McGuire, robbery detail.
Tough week, huh? Hear they've been driving you crazy up there. Just about, Tony. 4 robberies in 24 hours, giving us a run. How about Mort Gear? He around?
Yeah, he just went down the hall, Jess. Ought to be back in a minute. Why don't you fellas sit down?
Yeah,
Thanks very much. What's the latest, Tony? Anything since you picked up that blue sedan?
No, not much. Got the car in the impound, had it dusted for prints. We made them all right, both sets. Powell and Selby.
No sign of them around town?
No, got it pretty well covered, too. Not a trace.
Well, we're in a good spot to make it over into Mexico.
Hate to disappoint you.
What do you mean?
We think they already made it.
At 6 o'clock that night, Gonzalez, Ed, and I, together with Lieutenant Gear, Tony McGuire, and Sergeants Gayton and Schultz, drove south from San Diego to the international line. We left mug shots of Powell and Selby with the immigration officers at the entry gate. Then we drove into the town of Tijuana, contacted the local commandant of police, and he promised us full cooperation. He assigned a special detail of his men to work with us in covering the town. At 8 p.m., the block-by-block canvass of the city began. Every back alley, every bar, every restaurant, every hotel, they were all checked. The tourist attractions, the souvenir stands, the nightclubs, the Highlight Pavilion. We went straight through on it. 8 o'clock that night until 5 o'clock the next morning. All it got us was sore feet and a mediocre lead from a native taxi driver. After being shown the mug shots, he told one of the Mexican officers in the detail that about noon that day, he'd picked up 2 Americans resembling Powell and Selby and driven them to the town of Tecate, another Mexican tourist spot about 25 miles to the east. 10:30 a.m. We drove over and checked with the police at Tecate, and they told us that 2 Americans had arrived in the town that morning. He invited Jess Gonzalez to go along with the 3 of his men to the hotel where the men were supposed to be staying. Ed and I waited in the office. Hi, Jess. What do you got?
Oh, not much. Went over to the hotel. The 2 men weren't there. Desk clerk says they told him they were driving out to a little village about a mile from here.
Mm-hmm.
Police commandant asked me to come back here and wait. Said he and his men would drive out to the village and check the men out.
That seems a little funny, doesn't it?
Well, he didn't invite me to come along. It's not a good idea to push him. I mean, after all, it's his jurisdiction.
Yeah.
We're supposed to wait here till they get back? Yeah. I might be him now. See, policia? Yeah. See. About half an hour, yes, sir. All right, gracias. Goodbye, see. The commandant, he and his men found the 2 Americans.
Yeah?
No go. They're not Powell and Selby.
Half an hour later, the police commandant of Tecate returned to the station along with his men and the 2 American tourists in question. One look at them, and we knew we'd made the trip from Tijuana for nothing. Except for their build and the color of their hair, the 2 Americans bore little or no resemblance to Powell and Selby. 2:30 p.m. We headed back for Tijuana, and we checked in with Mort Gear and the rest of the men. While we'd been gone, they'd chased down half a dozen leads, but none of them had panned out. The rest of the afternoon, we covered the racetrack at Agua Caliente and distributed mugshots of the suspects to all track police officers. The mutual windows were covered, and also the foreign book. No luck. The 6 of us took time out for a bite of supper, and we talked it over. Logically, the next place in line to cover was either the fishing town of Ensenada on the coast or the city of Mexicali further inland. We decided to try Ensenada first. 7:30 that night, we checked in at the Ensenada police station where we met with the local sub-commandant, Pedro Martinez. Like the other commandants in Tijuana and Tecate, he offered full cooperation and gave us a special detail of men to aid in the search. We gave him a supply of mugshots of the 2 convicts to distribute among his men.
Here you are, sir. These are pictures of one of them, Andrew Powell. And this one here is the other man, Bert Selby.
All right, thank you. Juan? See?
Yes.
These pictures, Juan. Criminals. They're for distribution to the men, 1 each.
Sí. ¿Estos son los hombres?
Sí, ¿por qué?
Un momento.
Sí. Excuse me, officers.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
¿Qué pasa? Creo que los conozco.
Joe, what is it? Well, it's got me. I don't know.
See the look on his face when the chief showed him the mugshots?
Oh, he's got something on his mind. Let's wait a minute.
Officers, I hope you will excuse me.
Yes, sir. Anything wrong?
Well, my assistant, Teniente San Filippo. He says he knows the pictures of these men.
Oh, how's that?
He says he saw these men this morning here in Ensenada.
Yeah, he's sure about that, is he?
Yes, sir. He says he's sure. He says the 2 men were here last night, right here in the station.
You mean your men booked them in? They committed some kind of crime?
Oh, no, sir. They came in to report a crime.
8:20 p.m. On further questioning, the assistant to the Ensenada commandant of police told us that the night before, 2 men answering Powell and Selby's description had come in to file a complaint at the central police station. They charged that they'd had their pockets picked at a local bar while they were under the influence of alcohol. The 2 complainants, who matched Powell's and Selby's descriptions perfectly, signed themselves J.E. Dennis and Harold Thompson. both from Fresno, California. The same names and addresses that had been used by the occupants of the Southside Los Angeles hotel room where the discarded prison uniforms had been found a day and a half before. After a brief talk with the police commandant, he dispatched a special detail to go out and pick up the two men registered as Dennis and Thompson at a motel near the south end of the city. At the commandant's request, we remained at the office. 9 p.m., 9:30. The detail assigned to the job returned, but with only one of the suspects with him, Andrew Powell. While resisting arrest, the other suspect, identified as Selby, received a cut forehead and was being taken to a local clinic for treatment. The commandant briefed us on what had happened.
The rooms were searched, Officer Friday. Some money was found, also 2 guns, a revolver and a shotgun. Here they are.
All right, thanks very much, sir. Well, Powell, how about it? You ready to cop out?
What are you talking about, cop out? What'd you guys come all the way down here for anyway? You can't touch us.
What makes you think we can't?
You can't, that's all. You know better. You can't arrest us down here. No jurisdiction.
We didn't arrest you, Powell. The Mexican officers did.
Okay, fine. Now, how do you expect to get us out of Mexico? Guess again, copper. You know you can't do it. You haven't got the right to.
Maybe. You want to tell us where you have the loot, the money you took in those holdups?
Why should I? Look, why don't you admit it? We got you beat. We got over the line. You can't touch us down here.
Now, don't bet on that, mister. Commandant?
Yes, sir?
You want to tell him how it stands?
I will see that the general in charge of the Northern District is notified in the morning of your case. He will see that you and your partner are deported.
What are you trying to pull? You can't do that. You know it. It's illegal.
So is robbery, Powell. Come off it.
Doesn't make any difference. You can't touch us in Mexico. It's against the law. You can't touch us.
A popular misconception, Mr. Powell. I'm afraid you have made a mistake. If you like, you can pass the word.
How long would it be for us to receive the prisoners at the line, sir?
I don't know. A long time, I think. Maybe as long as 1 o'clock tomorrow.
You know you can't do this. You'll never get away with it. I know a lawyer in Tijuana. I'll get him to straighten it out.
You understand, Sergeant? We can't hand this man over to you now. But if you will be at the international border at 1 o'clock tomorrow, I'm sure they'll be crossing over.
You can't do this. It's illegal. You know you can't.
We're going to try.
Wasting your time? Why don't you admit it? You can't arrest us. We got over the line. We got you beat. You can't arrest us, and you know it. You know that, don't you?
There's only one thing I know for sure, Powell.
Yeah?
San Quentin. You got out, and you're going back.
The story you have just heard was true. The names were changed to protect the innocent.
On December 9th, trial was held in Superior Court, Department 87, City and County of Los Angeles, State of California. In a moment, the results of that trial.
Now, here is our star, Jack Webb.
Thank you, George Fenneman. Friends, try a pack of Fatimas tomorrow and compare them yourself. We're so sure that you'll enjoy Fatima's extra mild and soothing smoke that we'll give you your money back if you don't enjoy Fatima more than the king-size cigarettes you've been smoking. Now, in my opinion, nothing proves our confidence in Fatima more than that. So buy a pack tomorrow. I know you'll agree with me that Fatima is the best of all king-size cigarettes. That in Fatima, the difference is quality.
Andrew Powell and Bertram Selby were deported from Mexico as undesirable aliens and turned over to U.S. authorities at the international border. They were immediately arrested by police officers on the American side and returned to Los Angeles for trial. They pled guilty to 4 counts of first-degree robbery and received sentences as prescribed by law. First-degree robbery is punishable by a prison term of from 5 years to life. After being returned to San Quentin, Powell and Selby were filed on, tried, and convicted of escape. Both of them are now serving life terms in Folsom State Penitentiary, Represa, California.
For their cooperation in preparing tonight's broadcast, Dragnet wishes to thank Chief of Police Adam E. Jansen and the San Diego Police Department.
You have just heard Dragnet, a series of authentic cases from official files. Technical advice comes from the Office of Chief of Police W.H. Parker, Los Angeles Police Department. Technical advisors, Captain Jack Donahoe, Sergeant Marty Wynn, Sergeant Vance Brasher. Heard tonight were Barney Phillips, Whit Connor, Herb Ellis. Script by Jim Moser. Music by Walter Schumann. Hal Gibney speaking.
Fatima Cigarettes, best of all king-size cigarettes, has brought you Dragnet, transcribed from Los Angeles.
Now it's Counter Spy on NBC.